Recording. There we go.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you all for coming this morning. My name is Kelly Fleming. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for Future Generations University. This session is sort of an informational session regarding the one of the graduation requirements for the master's program is to complete a portfolio. And Dan Robeson, who some of you have had and some of you will have as a professor of a specific subject area, is also our professor of practice. And so he is going to go through sort of some things to keep in mind throughout your studies. This is a good session for people both at the beginning of their studies, in the middle, and near the end. We've revamped this process. So those of you that have been in the program and don't really know what I'm talking about, that's because we went ahead and did a big internal review of our process, and we're coming up with a more robust product. So without further ado, over to you, Dan.
Okay. Actually, none of this will be new to Bill Bridgeford, as he's.
Oh, yes, it will.
Okay. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm going to share a little bit about the ideas behind the master's portfolio. As we're presenting it will be a requirement as we moving forward, a more specific requirement. Okay. Why are we doing this? First of all, from your point of view, because it's required to graduate. But why are we requiring it for graduation? Okay. It is the proof evidence of student knowledge, ability, skills acquired in the program. Okay. Now, this has always been required at the graduate level. And I've got a picture here of my late wife's two theses, her master's in soil chemistry and her PhD in soils. Together, those two books were the evidence of 4.5 years of her, 5 years of her learning. And along with a diploma and a transcript, that was the only evidence in those days of the learning that she had gone through. Okay, this was before the internet, before the websites, and so there are these books that there was a copy in her house, a copy at the university, maybe a copy centrally that could be loaned around to universities if you required it. But that was as much as you could share information in those days. Okay. Obviously, technology's changed. In the case of Future Generations, between 2005 and 2013, 2017, we required a 4-term practicum ending in a thesis-like document. In those days, all the students took the same courses at the same time. All the students took research methods in term 1. They took monitoring evaluation in term 2, something that might be called practicum 3 in term 3, and then synthesis and integration in term 4. So there was always a course that was moving your practicum along. And part of the reason I'm giving you this talk is because for much of that time, I was the person responsible for moving it along. But there are other reasons, which I'll mention a little longer. But in that process, we were asking ourselves, is this the best way to document and display knowledge and skills in community change? In other words, a thesis that very few people are going to see. How many times, if you work in community change, are you going to produce a thesis-like document? You produce it once. So how relevant is that knowledge, is that experience to what you're doing day to day? Now, I would say it's still important to show that you can finish something that you start, right? So people that haven't finished their thesis, people that haven't finished their some sort of a final product, that brings a question mark as to whether people can finish what they started. Now, there were other problems. this program is designed to be equally accessible to people around the world. And this is a disadvantage to people. Not only is it, we thought, not the best way to show knowledge and skills and community change, but it's also a disadvantage to people that don't have English as a first or even second language. Okay. The concepts have changed with time and technology. The first to kind of break with the thesis were professional portfolios. These are in subjects like nursing, architecture, and design, where you don't care if your nurse can write a thesis or not. You want to know whether she knows what she's doing as she preps you for an operation or whatever she might be doing. So there was a recognition early on when the technology allowed it for professional degrees to say, okay, well, we're interested in not so much in how long a document you can write and how flowery your analysis. We're interested in knowing what your skills are, your abilities directly related to the job that we might hire you for. Now, even PhD programs are requiring a PhD portfolio. Erica Harney, who's a professor to some of you, her PhD is recent enough that she had to have a PhD portfolio, not just a thesis. You have to be able to demonstrate skills and knowledge beyond research and beyond writing a long report. You need to demonstrate width, not just depth. Most people or many people do a PhD and then they don't ever do research again. They teach, or the kind of research they do is not the kind of research that they did for their PhD. Few people repeat their PhD. It's different kind of research they do. So you're looking at professional, or if you're hiring them to teach, maybe you want to know if they can teach or not. Published papers. So at the professional level, they're requiring portfolios, and at the PhD level, they're requiring portfolios. So around 2015, 2016, Future Generations went through a broad assessment, evaluation, and we decided to instead of a long thesis type report, we'd go for an e-portfolio. Okay? So the class of 2017, which is an experimental class, had both the 4-term practicum and an e-portfolio. Now again, class of 2017 was the last one where all the students took the same courses at the same time, all the time. Okay. Since 2019, it has been designed for greater flexibility. Students join at different moments. They go through the program at different speeds and in a way more suited to each student. There has been a no 4-term practicum. Okay. Now, if you look at the course catalog, all this time an e-portfolio was required to graduate, but it was not defined nor monitored in a systematic fashion. In other words, it could be whatever it was. Okay. So as Kelly has mentioned, for a variety of reasons, one of which I'll mention later on, we decided to structure it a little more clearly. So most of you came here to find out what the master's portfolio is. I'm not going to get there yet because I want to first define what an e-portfolio is, how you might build an e-portfolio, and then I'll get to what is required for master's portfolio at FG. If you look it up, there are very different definitions of what an e-portfolio is. One I found, it's an electronic format for learners to record their work, their achievements, their goals, to reflect on their learning, to share and be supported in this. And this is one of the ways that Future Generations look at it. We want a place for you to store on it. We want you to reflect, and it's a place to give feedback. As those who have been in my courses know, it hasn't always been fully successful, but in my courses, everybody has to upload their e-portfolios, and we try to give feedback to each other on this. Another definition, e-portfolios can help students facilitate, document, and archive their own learning. It can become a learning tool to clarify students' educational goals, to integrate, consolidate their learning through reflection, showcase their achievements to potential future employers. So this is another reason, but not necessarily the full reason that Future Generations is emphasizing this. Now, what are the ePortfolio building blocks? Basically, at the very bottom, you have artifacts. You gather artifacts into pages. You gather pages into collections, and you should have an index, which allows somebody to coming in to see your portfolio to be able to get around. Now, one of the reasons I'm giving this talk is because when we first required ePortfolios, I decided that I should know what I was talking about, what I was requiring. So I built up an ePortfolio for myself as faculty, and just to reflect on what I was doing. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples from my own portfolio. This is an example of 3 artifacts on a portfolio page that I have on an eco sport resort that I manage, that I with some partners, and we own it. So these are 3 artifacts. There's a video here. I'm not going to open it, with an aerial tour of a golf course in the jungle. There's a picture of us riding horses, and there's a 2-meter boa constrictor. You have to click on the picture actually to see the boa, but it's there. And there's a video here of an arboreal anteater, a tamandua. So these are different artifacts on a single page, which I'll show you in a minute. Any questions up to here? Okay. My um, my portfolio is in Mahara, which Future Generations University used to require. It's an open source software that's associated with Moodle. And I have on my left here the index for my portfolio. So in 2018, 2019, I was responsible for research seminars. So there are 2 collections here. There's a page for each of the research seminars. And then I have an applied theory collection. This is my applied theory collection is where I document the activities where I attempt to apply the theory that I profess. In other words, I'm a person that very much believes that you should practice what you preach. So I'll give you a couple of examples of pages of that. But it's not a very visual index. It's not very dynamic. I can't find a way that the index displays except in alphabetical order. It's hard to hide things. It's hard to show things. And I just mentioned that aside from things that aren't that interesting, then I've got, for example, a collection on environmental activism. So these are activities aimed at influencing policy on the sustainable use of the Amazon. And so I write a blog, and I'm involved in certain activities. So these are documented on pages. You can click on that. But what I'm going to do now is give you an example of the applied theory collection. Okay. And these are examples in Mahara. And I meant to tell you at the beginning, please bear with me. Because it's not very easy to change sharing. I want to go to navigate. Sorry. Well, it didn't open. Sorry. I was afraid of this.
Yeah, keep looking. Yeah, see if you can get it to work, Dan. It's just another thing to remember that all of the ePortfolio sites are going to be, cloud-based live on the internet. So if you tend to have your internet go in and out, it's good to have it ready to go. It's just one
Well,
of the issues
I
we've
I
had in the
thought I
past.
was ready, but
Do you want to try and put it in the chat?
this is
Or it's
so
not going to open?
this is the difference between uh, um practice and theory.
It's a good example. All right.
Okay, so this is an example of a page. It's in my collection of applied theory, and it um is a page associated with the golf course, which is alongside Medidi National Park, which is the most biodiverse park in the world. We have horse riding. It's a golf course. There's a lot of wildlife, and so I document this. I've got, as you've seen, I've got videos, pictures, um, and then reflection, like the rationale. Why am I doing this? What's the purpose behind it? Is it working? Okay. Does the rationale hold up? So I have artifacts here. I display why it's important. I display the biodiversity. I show tourists having fun, but then I ask, is it working? Okay. So that's one example of a page with
Dan,
various artifacts. Kelly.
Dan, just interrupt. So each of those pictures or links go to another page, or is that it's just a flat?
This is in Mahara. So these
Right.
are individually uploaded.
Yeah.
I believe the video, for example, you click on it, it'll go to YouTube.
Okay.
It's not stored. That is not. But the
Okay.
photographs are stored in Mahara.
Right.
Okay, and that's
Right.
why when Mahara migrates, you have to make sure that it's that that. So I'm going to go to another page in this collection, which is my farm, El Mahal, Bolivia, and again, I've got pictures. It has to do my life and life-term interest is in looking for alternative slash and burn. Got a picture of slash and burn in India that we visited with students, burns, then agroforestry on my farm, diversity of products, cattle, and then over on the left, I have reflection. What it is I'm trying to do, does it work? Is it holding up? And then something that I'll talk about in a minute. This is a picture of me doing my PhD research in 1985. So one thing that we're interested in you're doing is including prior learning. In other words, we're not just interested in what you know once you started Future Generations program. We would like for you to show that you're building on your past experience, how that past experience can come in. So I'll get back to that. But this would be an example of prior learning and how my doing research in 1985 led for me to want to have a farm to experiment in. Okay. Any questions while I change back to share the other screen? Resounding silence. I'm beginning to get accustomed to resounding silence.
Good
Someone's
It's
morning.
not
Good
our
morning.
first.
Good morning.
It's not our first choice as faculty at Future Generations. At least I like people to jump in and show me when I've made a mistake. What softwares can you use?
Hold
So
on, Casey,
initially,
I have a question. Dan,
okay,
Casey
Bill.
wanted to say something and Bill wanted to say something. So go ahead, Casey.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Maybe this is what is, I think you're going to answer my question with the next slide. I was just going to ask, does the platform have to be Mahara, or can you use something else? And I think you're going to cover that next.
Well,
Great
I
question.
knew you were going to ask that question, so I prepared this slide.
Thank you.
Bill, what was your question?
I'm heading in the same direction as Casey, but also the way you set this up is those decisions were made because of the material that you wish to present. In other words, this the way you've done it here is not the sole way that we can set our individual profiles up within our different choices of software. Personally, I find Mahara to be beyond my capabilities to sort out.
Yes.
Okay, fine. So we can choose different platforms, but we also can tailor how we structure our portfolio to our particular coursework and the way we approached our work, I suppose.
Okay, I'm not going into great detail on what ePortfolios is, but if you look it up, one of the first things that they tell you is it's student or organized and directed. So you set it up the way you best see it. Your artifacts you set up the way you bet. Now we have some requirements, and as long as you meet those requirements, we're good. But I'm going to get back to this in some way. So we used to require Mahara, and now for at least 2 years we do not. I gave you examples in Mahara, not because I'm suggesting you go that way. That happens to be where I spent a lot of time setting my portfolio up. Now I've copied some of them into Google Sites, but I didn't see a point in showing you. I've also got this in Moodle Sites because I've got some examples done in Moodle Sites. So Mahara is open source but unwieldy, as Bill has said. And all 2017 and 2019 students had to do it in Mahara, and many students have because it was felt, or it was required to do it in Mahara. But for a couple of years, maybe 3 years now, we do not require Mahara. And Bill, in both of my courses, you could already use you could already use Padlet or Google Sites. So what software? Any portfolio or related software that can be reliably and permanently shared with the university. Most students have now used Google Sites or Padlet or a combination of the two. And I'm going to give some examples of each. But the first example I'll give you is an example in WordPress. Okay. Go again. Well, it's not loading. So, but I had an example in WordPress.
Yeah. And as we talk about software, the idea is that you find the software that either you are already comfortable with. So some students have used a mapping software because that's what they were comfortable with. And that allows for the features that we need, which are quite minimal. So most things will work. Go ahead, Dan.
Okay. So this is an example of this is both an ePortfolio page and a final artifact in the course monitoring evaluation, Valerie Morgan. So she has on this page, she has set up a number of artifacts showing her learning process, the logical framework, underlying theory of change. She has context. And each of these, you click on them and it will give you, if you want to learn more about the context, you go into the context. If you want to learn more about key issues, you click on the key issues. You are seeing the Padlet page, right?
Yes, yes.
That this is the presentation she made for the class, so you can see it in PowerPoint, you can see the video, her logical framework, and then her data sources. You can click down here to see the different data sources she has, and what is critical are reflection, conclusions, what's working, what's not working, um, identification of key indicators. So this has been done in Padlet. And as I'm going back through, like for this presentation, Mahara works for me because, it's there, it's linked. The university linked it, and Padlet, we have a university linked to Padlet. So I'm able to call these up. Whereas I'm finding with Google Sites that I've lost permission for some reason. There's nothing more infuriating than to go click on something and say, oh, wow, what has this person done? And then it says you need permission. Okay. So with Padlet, you need to set permission. With Mahara, you need to set permission. With Google Sites, you need to set permission. But for some reason, Google Sites, I was able to pull up some students, but not other students. So that's an issue for Kelly, for me, for Paula. But any questions on this particular example of an ePortfolio page in Padlet?
Right. As Dan mentioned, we have a university subscription. So if you go to Padlet on your own, you can usually do 3 Padlets for free. If you use it through our Future Generations account, it's unlimited and also means you can share it within the other people within the institution a little easier. So we've had a lot of success with this particular educational technology platform.
Well, we also have, through our Future Generations email, we have access to Google, all the Google sites, Google products.
Yeah.
So where there is the Google sites you would use would be associated with the university as well. And that is part of the problem with the permission, I believe, because I have a personal Gmail, and I think sometimes it's thinking I'm this other person and not Future Generations Dan Robinson. But anyway, it's annoying to click on that, which is supposed to be a permanent repository, and get for it to come up that you no longer have permission. So how would you build an e-portfolio? My recommendations to you are remember that any assignment for each class may have a broader purpose. Okay? You might want to share it with peers, might want to share it with the community, a future employer, and be thinking about special collections. In other words, this artifact that I did for intro to community change, that's kind of related to what I want to do for my research methods course, and start to gather those together and reflect on them. And this is where I'm heading overall. The next step is that you would want to store all of your course artifacts, your videos, your photos, your essays, in addition to specific assignment artifacts that you might have. You want to have the other things as like videos and photos in an accessible place. And I'll come back to what I mentioned before. Though this is not, may not jump out at you from the course catalog, because we're trying to sell a master's program there, but our philosophy values your prior knowledge. It values what you knew coming into the program. It values the connection you might have with your community, what you knew about that community before you entered. So you can be thinking about artifacts that you have that show your knowledge skills before you started in the program. That's something we've worked with Bill Bridgeford, because he's going back and looking at things that he did. How do I show this process that we did 3 years ago? I learned a lot from that process, but how do I display it? How do I upload it? Okay, so you want to be thinking about that right along. You want to remember that reflection is always important. So thoughts you might have as you're working these, as you're storing your artifacts, as you're putting them in a place, things occur to you, connections occur to you. You might want to be writing those things down. I have another example of Padlet here, but I'm going to move on because we've seen Padlet.
You could put it in the chat, Dan, and then people could look at it later.
Okay, well,
When,
this
at the
is
end.
these are good. This whole presentation is going to be available, right, with the links?
Yep.
Okay. So let's get back to the original topic. What's required for the master's portfolio at Future Generations University? Now, Bill was with me in synthesis and integration, where we started this. We're now formalizing it a much, but you'll be required to have a knowledge or learning collection, which is where you are to associate artifacts with each of the program learning objectives, PLOs, and reflect on this. Okay. Now I am going to go to this example.
While we change screens, Chris just put up a quick poll on which systems you've used before. It'd be helpful for us to know which of those are known by you guys. We'll just keep that poll up for a bit while Dan shows us
So
this
can
page.
you now see a Valley in West Virginia?
Yes.
Okay. So this is Kirsten Beveridge's learning e-portfolio or knowledge e-portfolio. And she has an initial index here. You click on that, artifacts. And then she has each of there were 10, at that time, 10 program learning objectives. And so you click on program learning objective 1. This is the index over here on the left. And so she's got, it's taking a while to load. And before I forget, this is done in Google Sites. Okay. And it did not require my permission to explore it. So with Paula, we need to look and see how this was done, that it's still easily okay. So she's got an action plan for scaling up local projects using seed scale methods. This is her artifact. This is what she says best shows or two artifacts that are most related to program learning objective number 1, which is graduates can purposely apply seed scale and related social change theory as comprehensive frameworks. So she displays the artifacts that she feels show this learning objective, and she reflects on it, right? Did we learn it? Did we not? Or what do I need to work on in the future? That's all valid reflection. So any question on this? This is you'll be required in synthesis and integration to associate artifacts with each of the learning objectives and to reflect on it. Okay. Bill.
Yeah. So
Yes.
we've talked a lot here about different learning, different platforms. Can you mix and match different platforms? For instance,
Yes.
can you use Padlet for some of it and then also move it to Google Sites, or and use Google Sites for other courses?
The short answer to your question is, Bill, yes, you can mix and match. I've had students that have done their pages in Google Sites, and then they gather them as collections in Padlet. And I've had other students do the opposite. In the case of Kirsten, she used all Google Sites. But I've had other students that have mixed and matched. I find that Padlet is kind of, it's a little, I think that the Google Sites, I mean, it's got all of Google behind it, so you can make it look really polished. But I find Padlet sometimes does what I want it to do more easily than Google Sites. And Mahara is, because I worked from it from the ground up, I can also get things up there, but it has its frustrations, as many of you know.
But the final product here should it be in one platform?
No, the final product,
Nope.
each student can define how they want to do it, whichever works best for them. But it has to be shareable. It has to be completely public within the Future Generations University system. Okay. Which means that a year from now, 2 years from now, 4 years from now, we go and click on that link should still work. Okay. Now we've had some problems. We've worked with Mahara because initially that wasn't happening. They would migrate versions and we'd lose information. Now that hasn't happened for a couple of years now, but it's an issue.
Yeah, like
Thank you.
said, yeah, we try to make this as student directed as possible. What I do find is students, you learn certain technologies, and so it's easier to just stay within those certain technologies. But yeah, we want you to use what works best for you.
I'm not, my personal frustration with Zoom is this black bar that keeps.
Yeah, we should send them a mean email.
With,
all right, you're on transparency.
So the first thing you're going to be required in your master's portfolio is a knowledge or learning collection. That's going to be more or less the same for all of you. You'll do it in a different platform. You'll use different pictures, but you're all associating your own artifacts with the university, the master's program, program learning objectives. The next one, and which is the Spotlight Collection or Summative Project. And the reason we're having this conversation now is that at the end, we will require you to have a collection which shows around a particular idea how your ideas have grown over the terms. It's like the practicum, but not as regimented as the practicum. So if you're just starting, if you have a particular interest, then we want you to know that we actually value if you start doing a project in one course, and let's say that's in your intro to community change, you gather an idea. Then when you take research methods, you move that idea along. You might then go into independent studies or in other courses, or your prior knowledge. You put that together into a summative project. But we want you to start thinking about it at the beginning. Integration at the end. Okay. So I'm gonna mention this other thing, and then I'm gonna go to an example of a summative project. Okay. The master's portfolio, in addition to a knowledge or learning collection, spotlight collection, or summative project, we expect a digital CV, and you would want examples, not necessarily like example of writing, ABC, example of photography, ABC. You want to make sure that on your e-portfolio, there are examples of good writing, of good photography, of good videography, and other media skills, writing skills, critical thinking skills. Okay, so these are the things that are going to be the basic requirements for your master's portfolio. I'm going to go to an example here, and then we'll have some questions.
Yep, I just also want to point out that we did ask these students if they could share, and they were all very happy to share for this presentation, and also in the future when you get the slides with the links, because these are things that they're pretty proud of, and I'm sure if you reached out to any of them individually to ask them about exactly how they did it or that kind of thing, they'd be happy to work with you on that. So we did ask for people to use them in this presentation. They also will, kind of how Dan mentioned at the beginning, that we have currently on the shelf in Future Generations office, we've got a shelf of portfolios of, practicums. We are working on how to have sort of a permanent record of your portfolio as well, somewhere where we don't lose access, like Dan keeps saying. This has been an ongoing issue for us internally. And so we will be working with each of you to kind of come up with a way to kind of have something permanent as much
you
as
see a
works.
person sitting by a West Virginia stream?
We
frozen?
do.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So this is a Spotlight e-portfolio, but this was done at the at the end of the program. I asked them put together a summative project. This isn't something they were thinking about from the beginning. Okay, but and also in synthesis and integration, I said students are in the program for different reasons. Some students are in it because they want to improve their professional profile. They want to advance a career. Other students are problem oriented and maybe more interested in a specific problem. I'm problem oriented. We're talking about deforestation, burning in the Amazon. So so you can do a Spotlight e-portfolio in that way, or you can be a community oriented and you're more invested in your community. So in Kristen's case, I believe she was a professional / career oriented. So her Spotlight e-portfolio, starts with about me. This is in Google Sites. Over here, she's got an index, home, gallery, resume, examples of work. But she's got artifacts that show community work, a community organization, and she also did projects related to tourism in her county, Pocahontas County. So she's got artifacts related to that, and there are related links, gallery. The only thing that I would add to this, that if she was thinking about this from the first term, she might be linking it and saying, well, I started out thinking this and I ended up thinking this. I found these things were useful. So there could be more reflection. Okay. But this is an example of her going back over her master's program and the artifacts that build towards where she wants to go in the future. Okay, that's a Spotlight collection or a summative project. Some of you might be more research interested, that you want to start out with a research question and kind of build on that over time. Other people would be more interested in community methods and community dynamics. So they'd want to perhaps emphasize more on what they've learned on how you organize West Virginian communities. I don't know. I don't want to tell you because you're the one to say what interests you. And we're talking to you this now because we want you to be thinking about what interests you and for you to be building towards something that's bigger than the components by the end of your time master's program. So any questions? I have one final slide here. Are we clear on what the master's portfolio is, or are there still some doubts?
In your experience, I mean, it's good to start early, I would assume. At what, if you were to stage this out, at what point, where should we use as benchmarks to make sure we're not falling behind?
That's a great question, Bill. I think that's one of the reasons we're doing this presentation. You also have a number of, I think ideally you're kind of, in my ideal scenario, right? At the end of each semester, you collect up all the things that you think you might use, and then you do a little bit of reflection at that moment. Because what really works well for this project is if you have your reflections from each semester saying, this is what I learned this semester, this is what it connects to my big goals for this master's program, even if those goals change over time, because it's hard to remember how you were thinking semester 1, 2, 3, 4. But once you get to semester 7, seeing that progression is really a powerful experience for you. And it shows from Dan's next slide, shows how useful this program has been for those that we serve. So I would say the idea is to put in place what you think will work as sort of the structure for staying organized, because sometimes if you get the structure for your organization down pat, then it's easier to stay on track. We should have one of these presentations or similar things each semester. So that might be a good time to just remember, oh yeah, remember a year ago, I didn't really do anything with this. Let me circle back to it. Dan, was there anything more specific than that? I don't think we've got
Well,
sort of a
I would answer his question a little differently.
Okay.
There are two ways to look at benchmarks. Okay. From the university's point of view, we're interested, we expect, and we're interested in finding out if it happens that that the program learning objectives that we set out are fulfilled. Now, the way it's set up is we're not saying that they need to be fulfilled in a certain order. We just want to know that by the end of the program, that those program learning objectives have been hit. So that first collection is of interest more to the university, but also to the student. I mean, I think that students that did this found themselves going back and, they'd forgotten artifacts they'd done in the first term, and it helped them to go back and look at everything they've done. Now, in the second one, I just noticed that for some reason the number is repeated. I didn't have much fun with the Future Generations format here, but anyway, the benchmarks in the Spotlight collection or summative project, that is a subject that you identify, that it is your interest that you have defined. So you're the one to best say if your benchmarks are being met or not. And a good way to reflect would be like you in turn, did I meet the expectations that I had? Is this what I expected? Am I as a student doing what I expected to do? Is the program fulfilling what I expected? So those would be benchmarks that you would set, not the university, because the university is not going to tell you what your project is or how you think about it, and what your benchmarks are. Okay, our benchmarks are more in the first collection, and the second collection is more from your point of view, but both of these are of interest to the university and of interest to my next slide. Okay.
Thank you. Makes sense.
This is from our website. Okay. Hey, are you interested in our affordable master's degree? It's a graduate level courses, applied skill. It equips you with knowledge, excels across social field change, and then higher learning commission accredited program. Okay. What does that mean? It means that the university has gone through a process of being accredited, which is it's a voluntary process. Okay. And the university is submitted to itself, and there is an organization called the Higher Learning Commission that accredits the program. And basically, Future Generations has spent the last 20 years gaining and maintaining accreditation. Okay, it's something that a university has to do permanently. And with regard to the Higher Learning Commission, the better documented the student learning, the more secure the accreditation. So you might say, well, that's only of interest to the university. But it's not. Why? Because this is when you get your degree, it is a degree that's from an accredited program, the Higher Learning Commission in the United States, which means it has met the same standards as a master's program at Harvard, as West Virginia University, because there are different regions, but we all submit ourselves to the same process. Okay? And there is a huge difference between those programs that are not accredited and those that are. So as a student, it is very important for you to have your degree from an accredited institution. So it's a back and forth thing. We need students to give have good evidence of learning, but we need to create an environment where you learn well, and it's a back and forth process. So I just wanted to make this sure that as the universities, we reflect on this, we say, okay, we required this, but as we go back and try to document it, it could be documented better. Okay.
Thanks, Dan. I know people probably have to run to a 10 o'clock meeting, but if you have any questions, we've got 3 minutes before 10. If you've got to run off, I totally get it. Thank you I'll just wave goodbye in his very Zoom way. Thank you all for being here. But yeah, we'll hang out for a little bit if you have questions, because I know it's sometimes hard questions come up when you're at a session like this, but you don't come up at other times. So Jean-Pierre,
well, we had some questions in the context, which is my own preference.
Yes. Jean-Pierre, did you have a question? And then we'll go to Bill.
No, I have no question. Just
Okay.
I was coming lately. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. As we said at the beginning, we will be, this has been recorded. Hopefully Chris will stop in case there's a good question, Chris, I guess keep recording. We'll send it out as a YouTube link,
Yeah.
also the sites that you can visit, because I do think it's a good like Bill mentioned, it's going to be a while before you submit the final version of this, and so having these as reference points is going to be really helpful going along. So great. Bill, did you have a question?
The links are embedded in the original presentation as well. So if we put up the presentation, you can watch it and follow a link if you want.
Great idea. Bill.
So when I was looking into other master programs, faculty advisors were often assigned, and I just wanted to know, will be assigned for us also?
Another great question, Bill. Like Dan mentioned, we're sort of in the process of sort of restructuring this. and having some sort of portfolio advisor, faculty advisor role within the institution is definitely something that we're looking into. At the moment, it's sort of a position that Dan Robeson and Chris Roper kind of share. But I will get back to you on sort of the specifics around faculty advisor role within the institution. But yes, that is something we're trying to make sure we resource. As Dan mentioned, this is a back and forth. We want to resource students as well as we can, so that they can produce some great portfolios for us. So very great question. Dan, did you have
yes, we used to have, when we had a practicum, we used to have advisors for each student. And then for different reasons, we moved away from that practicum. But then we've realized, well, it's actually of interest to students to be working across 4 terms. And you as the sooner you come up with a topic that you really want to concentrate on, the easier it is to provide you with an advisor. If it's outside my experience or Chris's experience or Kelly's experience. So we're moving back to this. You try to evolve, you try to change, you try to improve, and then you realize that some changes you make, you left something behind. So you want to go back and not grab everything that you had, but a couple of the tools that you did have, and that includes advising.
All right.
And
Thank you, and thank
again,
you for
Bill,
the presentation. This was interesting.
Bill,
Great.
the clearer you are on your ideas and what you want to work with, the easier it is to provide feedback to you. Okay. An advisor is not to tell you what you should do, what topic you should choose. Okay. We might end up doing that, but really the people that'll do best in this program are those that have an idea of what they want to do, why they joined, and then it's easy to help.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Yeah, if people can write an email, I think most of you have my email. You can write me if you've got further questions.
Okay. Well, I'll just
I have an offline question
sure.
relating to my specifics. So people don't have
Yeah.
to be on the call to listen to it if they don't want to.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, I'll stop recording now.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah.
What might work is